On Sunday, Hezbollah retaliated against Israel by launching hundreds of rockets and drones inside Israel. The group claimed to have fired over 320 Katyusha rockets, hitting 11 military targets inside Israel. This attack marked the beginning of their response, with more actions expected in the coming days. And in preparation for the assault, Israeli jets had already launched preemptive strikes on targets inside Lebanon. Meanwhile, Lebanon's health ministry said 3 people were killed in Israeli strikes in the country's south. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that the country would take all necessary measures to protect itself.
Early in the morning, we identified Hezbollah's preparations to attack Israel in consultation with the Minister of Defense and the Chief of Staff. We instructed the IDF to act proactively to remove the threat. The IDF has since been working vigorously to thwart the threats. It destroyed thousands of rockets aimed at the north of the country. It also thwarts many other threats and operates with great power, both in defense and attack. I ask you, citizens of Israel, to follow the directives of the Home Front Command. We are determined to do everything possible to protect our country, to return the residents of the north safely to their homes, and to continue to uphold a simple rule: whoever harms us, we harm him.
And Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant on Sunday announced a 48-hour nationwide emergency after the Israeli military launched preemptive strikes inside Lebanon. The emergency enables the IDF for the Israeli Defense Forces to issue instructions to citizens of Israel, including limiting gatherings and closing sites where it may be required. Israel on Sunday warned that Hezbollah's actions towards Israeli territory could lead to wider regional escalation. Israeli military said that it was striking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon in self-defense.
We can see that Hezbollah is preparing to launch an extensive attack on Israel while endangering the Lebanese civilians. We warn the civilians located in the areas where Hezbollah is operating to move out of harm's way immediately for their own safety. Hezbollah's ongoing aggression risks dragging the people of Lebanon and the whole region into a wider escalation.
The military also warned the residents to immediately leave areas where Hezbollah was operating, with air alerts, sirens sounding across the country's north.
The IDF is striking terror targets in Lebanon from which Hezbollah was planning to launch their attacks on Israeli civilians. This follows more than 6,700 rockets, missiles, and explosive UAVs fired by Hezbollah at Israeli families, homes, and communities since October 8th.
And as the emergency was declared in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant held a meeting at the command center in Tel Aviv. Israel's Prime Minister's office said that they were assessing the situation, and the Prime Minister will convene the Security Cabinet shortly. Meanwhile, the Defense Ministry said that Gallant briefed his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin on the overall situation, asserting that Israel was determined to use all means at its disposal to defend its citizens. U.S. Secretary of Defense assured of all help to Israel to address its security threat. The two leaders also discussed the importance of avoiding regional escalation. And the next meeting on the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas will take place in Cairo this evening. U.S. President Joe Biden had indicated that talks between Israel and Hamas are taking place in Cairo, and they went well on Saturday. Cairo is hosting the high-level meeting of officials from Egypt, the United States, Qatar, Israel, and of course the Hamas, with the aim of reaching an agreement to stop the Israeli war on Gaza and complete the exchange of detainees and prisoners. On Saturday, they held one round of discussions to bridge gaps between the positions of Israel and Hamas. Responding to questions from reporters on the status of the Gaza truce talks, Biden gave a thumbs up. And Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati held an emergency meeting on Sunday with officials and caretaker ministers at his residence in Beirut to review the security threat emanating from the escalating situation. And to give us more on the evolving story, we are joined by DD India's Sarah Coates from Tel Aviv. Sarah, first of all, give us a sense of what the latest situation is in Israel as emergency has been declared, especially what the situation on the Israel-Lebanon border is.
Well, this was certainly a major escalation earlier this morning. The IDF's Home Front Command putting out a 48-hour advisory for people to stay very close to shelter, but that has since been lifted in central parts of the country like here in Tel Aviv, although that directive does remain for residents in the north who have been told to stay very close to shelters. Now, we can tell you that university exams have been cancelled and a number of flights have also been cancelled in and out of Ben Gurion Airport, that is the international airport not far from where I'm standing. Carriers like Air France suspending these flights until further notice. Now, as we go to air, it remains pretty quiet on that border. Rocket alert sirens haven't rung out for some hours now. But this is certainly a very worrying situation, given that Hezbollah says that this is only phase one of its retaliation for the assassination of the second in charge of Hezbollah, Fouad Shakur, that happened, as you may remember, in Beirut a little earlier this month. So certainly a very tense time on the ground. Beaches in the north have been closed. People are not allowed to go there. But in terms of what's going on the ground here in Tel Aviv, it really is business as usual.
Okay. And Benjamin Netanyahu, Sarah, has called a meeting of his security cabinet. What is your sense? What is the Israeli assessment? Are they mulling over more strikes on Hezbollah?
Well, that is yet to be seen. We aren't privy to that kind of information, although Hebrew media is reporting, saying that an Israeli warship was hit in the Mediterranean Sea by one of these rockets launched by Hezbollah. That remains unconfirmed, but we certainly do know that the Israeli Prime Minister has convened his top-level staff, including the Defence Minister Yoav Gallant. And that was shortly after Gallant had a phone call with his counterpart in the United States, the US Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, who came out to reaffirm the US's ironclad commitment to Israel's defense and any attacks by Iran and its proxies. Now, in addition to this, President Biden spoke out saying that he is closely monitoring events in both Israel and Lebanon. So certainly it is a time of tension here in the region and a time that people are really hoping that if indeed a ceasefire were to come into play, then potentially this may bring down tensions in other parts of the region.
Okay. Sarah, let's talk about the talks going on in Cairo. What are you hearing? The Americans say day one went good. They'll meet again. Do you get a sense that they're working towards narrowing the gaps in the hardened positions of both sides?
There really isn't a lot of optimism surrounding these ceasefire talks. They've been going round and round in circles for months now. Now, we can tell you that an Israeli delegation is on hand in Cairo as these key mediators really try and get these gaps closed between Israel and Hezbollah. We do, of course, know that Hamas is not directly participating in these talks. We do know that a Hamas delegation is actually on hand, but they'll be meeting with these mediators at the end of each day when these talks do wrap up. Now, one of the main sticking points here is, of course, Israel's insistence to remain present with troops on the Philadelphia corridor. That is that very narrow strip of land that divides Egypt and Gaza. And this is a very strategic region, given that Israel says it will not leave because if it does, it believes that there will be weapons smuggled actually from Egypt into the Gaza Strip. So certainly a lot hinging on the ceasefire talks currently going on in Cairo. And as I previously mentioned, a lot of hope that if indeed a ceasefire can be reached after more than 10 months of fighting, that this could bring down tensions, temperatures in other parts of the region. But at the same time, while there is a lot of hope, there is really not a lot of optimism.
Okay, but there are divisions and cracks within the Israeli establishment also, isn't it, Sarah? With Ben-Gvir saying that, the Shin Bet chief who's in Cairo saying that, he was responsible, and if he gives away anything, he'll be responsible for security situation in Israel. So there are divisions, so that could affect the talks that take place or the proposals put forward by the Israeli side.
Of course, there have been disagreements over the last few months over the way that Benjamin Netanyahu has really been handling his negotiating team. Some of these key negotiators have been quoted as saying things like basically Benjamin Netanyahu has been handcuffing them, not giving them enough leeway to actually go in and get these talks done. There's also, of course, this pressure that Benjamin Netanyahu has been facing for months upon months now, and that is from the far right wing of his coalition, like Itamar Ben-Gvir. He is a far right national security minister, and he's always been threatening to walk away from the government if Netanyahu makes what he calls an irresponsible deal with Hamas.
Okay. Sarah Coates, many thanks for joining us from Tel Aviv and giving us those updates.